I'll never forget the sound of those sirens slicing through the quiet of my street that afternoon. Not because I'd done anything wrong, far from it, but because I knew immediately who had made that call and exactly why. You already know the culprit, Karen. Not just any neighbor, but HOA Karen, the self-appointed queen of our little suburban kingdom, who acted as if her opinions carried the weight of law itself. That day, her usual antics crossed a line she'd never been allowed to approach before. She didn't just leave another passive-aggressive note in my mailbox. No, she dialed the police and unleashed a flood of lies designed to make me look like a criminal right in my own front yard. But here's the kicker, something Karen could never have predicted. Only 30 minutes after the cops strutted onto my lawn, flashing lights and all, the FBI would arrive at their station, and every ounce of smug superiority she carried around like a tiara would vanish, leaving her credibility in ruins. Before we dive into this story, take a second and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Because every neighborhood has that one person, that self-appointed watchdog who thinks clipboards and complaint forms are the highest form of moral authority. For us, that person was Karen, but not just any Karen, HOA Karen. She wore her authority like a crown, strutting through cul-de-sacs, in yoga pants 3 sizes too small, clutching her clipboard like it was the Constitution itself. Her hobbies weren't normal. She didn't bake, garden, or even take long walks with her dog. No, her favorite pastime was monitoring everyone's life within a 3-block radius. Grass a tiny bit too tall? Violation notice? Trash bins left out an extra hour? Warning letter. Christmas lights before Thanksgiving? Fine. But me? I was her ultimate obsession. She couldn't handle that I refused to bow to her imaginary throne. I wasn't rude or confrontational, but I also wasn't about to let some nosy neighbor dictate how I lived in my own home. That drove her absolutely nuts. Control was her drug, and anyone who didn't fall in line became her enemy. At first, her attacks were small. Snide notes on my mailbox about garden tools left out. Then she tried to monitor when I had visitors stay overnight. But the real kicker? I didn't play her game. I lived my life without consulting her imaginary rulebook, and in her world, that was the ultimate crime. That particular Saturday, I was outside barbecuing with a couple of friends. We were laughing, tending to steaks and ribs. Nothing dangerous, nothing even remotely illegal. But to Karen, our casual afternoon looked like a full-blown criminal operation. I caught her peeking through her blinds at least 3 times, her face twisted in that cocktail of disgust, superiority, and pure entitlement. Then she stepped outside, pacing the sidewalk like a warden inspecting prisoners. "Do you even have a permit for this gathering?" She barked across the yard, her voice sharp and cutting like a chainsaw. I laughed. "Karen, it's called having friends. You should try it sometime." Her jaw clenched and she muttered something about rules being rules before storming back into her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That should have been it. But with Karen, the story never ended where it should. 15 minutes later, the red and blue reflections of police lights danced across my windows. 2 squad cars rolled up, tires crunching against the asphalt. My friends froze mid-laugh, spatulas hovering over sizzling meat. Even the ribs paused in mid-heat, as if sensing the tension in the air. I didn't need to guess who called. The officers jumped out like action heroes, hands near holsters, eyes already narrowing. One barked a step away from the grill. I blinked. "Overcooking burgers? Really?" The taller cop sneered. "We got a call about suspicious activity, possible drug use, possible illegal gathering. Care to explain?" And just like that, Karen appeared at her door again, phone in hand, grinning like a star witness ready for her close-up in a courtroom drama. She jabbed a finger in my direction. "That's them! They've been loitering all afternoon, drinking who knows what else. I don't feel safe in my own neighborhood." Her voice trembled with fake fear, like she was auditioning for daytime television. My friends stared at her, jaws dropping. One whispered, "Is she for real?" Oh, she was real. Real crazy. The officers exchanged glances, suspicion immediately landing on me, not on Karen or her ridiculous claims. Because that's how it always worked. Karen's lies were just the match. Once lit, the fire spread fast, and in this case, it was aimed directly at me. I knew this wasn't a typical HOA tiff anymore. Karen had escalated into dangerous territory. She'd weaponized the police, betting they'd see me as the problem without a shred of proof. Her smug smile said it all. She thought she had won. But she had no idea that her little stunt had triggered forces far beyond her control. First things first, the cops showed up with more attitude than concern. There's a particular stiffness in the posture of law enforcement when they show up uninvited, the kind that makes you feel like they're already writing your obituary. The tall one with the buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses acted like his reflection was law itself. The shorter, stockier one smirked like this was his favorite game. Hands visible, eyes sharp. I raised my spatula, dripping with barbecue sauce like some kind of arrest-worthy weapon. "Seriously?" I asked, forcing calm. "I'm in my backyard cooking food. Since when do I need a license for hamburgers?" Karen stepped forward, seizing her moment like the star of a bad play. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. I've been so scared. They've been loud, drinking, scaring the neighborhood. I think they might even be selling drugs." I tightened my jaw. Selling drugs at a barbecue? She had clearly gone nuclear. Buzzcut glared. "Reports match what we see here. Hanging out, food, drinks. Could be a cover." A cover. I wanted to laugh. Potato salad a front for a criminal empire? Soda cans hiding illicit substances? I kept my voice calm. "You're being played. She doesn't like me, that's all. You're wasting your time." Smirk leaned in, voice low. "Or maybe you're wasting ours. You people always think you can get away with anything." My friends looked nervous. One whispered, "Just give them your ID." I shook my head. I knew exactly where this was headed. Rolling over now would only escalate things further. Karen clapped her hands like she'd just won a game. "Exactly. Thank you, officers. Finally, someone is taking this seriously." I turned to her slowly, a measured smile on my face. "Careful, Karen. You might get exactly what you asked for." She blinked, confused for a split second, before smugness returned. She thought the cavalry was on her side. She thought the show was hers to win. But while she and her boys in blue were busy puffing out their chests, I was quietly making my own moves. I pulled out my phone subtly and typed a single phrase. Moments later, a one-word response buzzed back. Calm settled over me like armor. Buzzcut snapped. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way, don't test us." I tilted my head. "Funny, I was about to say the same thing." Karen laughed. "Oh, please, you think anyone's going to believe you over the police? Good luck." But she didn't notice the change in my eyes, the calm confidence, the quiet patience of someone who already knew the ending. While Karen and her boys thought they were writing my story, I was already writing theirs. And the final chapter was about to come faster than any of them expected. There's a strange kind of silence that falls right before chaos. The cops stood in my backyard, hands twitching near their belts, Karen hovering like some deranged queen about to watch her subject executed. My friends shifted nervously, exchanging looks that screamed, "Should we leave?" But me, I wasn't about to give Karen that satisfaction. Buzzcut took a step closer, his boots crunching against the gravel. "Sir, I'm not going to ask you again. Step forward. Show us some ID." "ID for what crime?" I asked, my voice calm, almost bored. Is having too many friends over, or is it simply existing in a neighborhood where Karen doesn't approve? Smirk barked a laugh. "You've got a smart mouth that's going to land you in the back of a cruiser. Real fast." Behind him, Karen's grin widened. She was loving this. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. Her arms folded, her body angled toward the neighbors who were watching from their porches. She wanted an audience. "See?" she called out dramatically. "He's combative. He's refusing lawful orders. This is exactly what I've been warning the HOA about." Combative. I raised an eyebrow. "Karen, I've spoken fewer words than your last haircut lasted. If anyone's combative, it's the woman fabricating crimes in her head." Karen gasped theatrically, hand flying to her chest. "Did you hear that, officers? He's threatening me." Buzzcut's hand hovered closer to his cuffs. "That's enough. You're done talking." I held up my free hand, still clutching the spatula in the other, and said, "Careful now. You sure you want to go through with this?" The words hung in the air, heavy loaded. My friend shot me nervous glances. Karen squinted like she couldn't quite decide if I was bluffing. Buzzcut snorted. "Is that a threat?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "It's advice." That rattled them more than I expected. Smirk's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. He glanced at Karen as if silently asking, "What's this guy hiding?" Karen, of course, doubled down. "Don't listen to him, he does this all the time. He thinks he's untouchable. Show him he's not." Neighbors murmured louder now. Some pulled out phones, recording the unfolding circus. Karen noticed, straightened her posture, and started shouting louder, making sure her words carried. She wanted to control the narrative. "He's dangerous, he's harassing me, he's Karen." I cut and voiced sharp. "You're about to dig a hole so deep even your HOA fines can't fill it." That earned me a ripple of laughter from somewhere across the street. Karen whipped her head around, glaring daggers at whoever dared laugh at her performance. The cops weren't laughing. Buzzcut stepped forward again, cuffs dangling from his fingers. "Last chance. Don't make me drag you in front of your neighbors." I tilted my head, letting my eyes rest on those cuffs. "Funny thing about dragging people away," I said. "Sometimes the ones doing the dragging end up in chains themselves," Smirk sneered. "You think you're clever? You're not. We run this block." "Do you?" I asked quietly. "Or do you just think you do?" For the first time, there was hesitation, a flicker of doubt. Karen noticed it, panicked, and jumped in. "Don't let him intimidate you. He's bluffing. He's nobody." But even as she said it, I slipped my phone back out, pretending to check a text. My thumb hovered over the screen, then casually tapped. Once. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just a small, precise move. Buzzcut's eyes narrowed. "Who you texting?" I slid the phone back into my pocket. "Someone who matters," Smirk laughed nervously. "Yeah, who's that? Your lawyer?" I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice so only the two officers and Karen straining her ears could hear. "You'll find out in about 25 minutes. That froze them." "Excuse me," Buzzcut asked, his bravado cracking. I straightened spatula still in, hand like a badge of defiance. "You heard me. You've got 25 minutes to decide whose side you're really on." Karen scoffed loudly, trying to reclaim control. "He's bluffing. He's always bluffing. Arrest him already." But her voice shook, just a little enough for me to notice. The standoff stretched on thick with tension. My friends stood frozen neighbors, whispered cameras recorded, and in the middle of it all, I stood calm, a half smile, tugging at my lips. Because while Karen thought she'd orchestrated her perfect show, she had no idea that the real show hadn't even started yet. The clock was ticking, and when it hit zero, everything, Karen's lies, the cops' arrogance, the entire charade would implode, and I'd be right there to watch it burn. There's an art to patience. Karen never mastered it. The cops never respected it. But me, oh, I had patience, sharpened like a blade. By this point, we'd been standing in my backyard for nearly 20 minutes. The stakes had gone cold. The neighbors had pulled up lawn chairs like it was free Saturday entertainment. And Karen was buzzing with the giddy energy of someone who thought she'd finally won. Buzzcut twirled his cuffs, leaning closer. "You think you're smart, don't you?" I know I'm smarter than the circus I'm looking at, I replied evenly. Smirk barked. Alaf. Careful, tough guy. You keep talking like that, you'll be enjoying the view from a holding cell. Karen chimed in, practically bouncing on her heels. Yes, take him in already. You're wasting time. He's dangerous. Look at them. Defiant, disrespectful. Do you know how many rules he's broken in this neighborhood? I turned slowly, letting my eyes scan the neighbors watching from the sidelines. Some of them shifted uncomfortably. They weren't. All Karen's followers. A few of them knew she was lying, but fear and HOA politics kept them silent. So, I gave them a show. You hear that? Everyone, I said, loudly gesturing toward Karen with my spatula. I'm dangerous because I dared to barbecue in my own yard. Dangerous because I didn't kneel before the HOA queen. Dangerous because Karen decided to pick up a phone and lie. Karen's face twisted. Lies. You're the liar here. Oh, really? I leaned closer. Then tell me, Karen, what exactly did you say on that call? Her lips pursed. She hesitated because she knew the truth, and so did the officers, but speaking it out loud would expose just how ridiculous her claims were. The silence stretched long enough that I decided to push. You told them I was dealing drugs, didn't you? At a barbecue? I let the sarcasm drip from every word. You told them I was some kind of criminal mastermind hiding under a patio umbrella, and they believed you. Buzzcut stiffened. Smirk shifted uncomfortably. Karen's smugness flickered, but she forced a laugh. Well, if you didn't have anything to hide, you wouldn't be so worried. I smiled slowly. Funny, I'm not worried at all. You should be. That landed like a brick in a still pond. The neighbors perked up. The officer's eyes narrowed. Karen's brows knitted together. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded. I crossed my arms, finally setting down the spatula. It means the world doesn't run on your lies, Karen. And it means the little game you started has already reached people way above your pay grade. Buzzcut tilted his head. What are you getting at? I shrugged casual. You ever hear the phrase federal clearance? The color drained from Karen's face. The officers sex-changed glances. My friends looked at me like I'd just grown another head. Karen stammered. You're bluffing. He's bluffing. Don't listen to him. But her voice cracked. I took a step closer, my ears locked on hers. 30 minutes. That's all I asked for. 30 minutes to let the right people get where they need to be. And now I tapped my watch. Your clock is running out. Buzzcut frowned, his tone shifting from arrogant to cautious. What are you saying? Who are you? I smiled, but there was no humor in it. The wrong guy to pick a fight with. Karen shrieked. Don't listen to him. He's making this up. Arrest him. Do your job. But the officers were no longer lunging forward. They were hesitating. That's the thing about bullies. When someone doesn't flinch, they start to doubt their own power. I pulled my phone from my pocket again, holding it up. A message glowed on the screen. 3 simple words. On our way. I held it high enough for Karen and the officers to see. Karen's face went pale. She shook her head, waving her hands as though she could fan away reality. No, this is nothing. He's just pretending. You can't seriously believe him. But her voice was higher now, shaky, and for the first time that afternoon, her confidence cracked. I leaned back, taking in the whole absurd scene, the cops standing unsure, Karen unraveling in front of the neighborhood she loved to control, my friends frozen in disbelief, and the neighbors watching like they'd paid for front-row tickets. And then, I said calmly, almost softly, you wanted a show, Karen. You wanted drama. Well, guess what? You just got yourself a front-row seat to the main event. Karen sputtered, her hands trembling. What? What are you talking about? I checked my watch again, then smiled. 10 minutes. The officer shifted. Smirk finally spoke quieter than before. You're bluffing. I met his eyes unblinking. Stick around. You'll see. And right then, I knew the tide had turned. The fear had shifted. No longer mine, theirs. The storm was almost here, and when it hit, none of them, not Karen, not her pet cops, would be ready for the impact. Tick, tick, tick. I could almost hear the clock winding down in Karen's head. She paced near the sidewalk now, her hands fluttering nervously. She kept glancing toward the street like she was waiting for backup. She thought the cavalry was already here, the cops. But the real cavalry, they were still en route. Buzzcut tapped his cuffs against his palm. I'm done playing games, pal. You've got 5 seconds to comply before. Before he could finish the low growl, a vengeance echoed down the block, not the lazy purr of a squad car. Number this was different, heavy, coordinated. 3 black SUVs rolled up like thunder engines, rumbling tires, biting the pavement. They didn't just drive. They arrived commanding the street. Doors flung open. Men and women in dark suits and tactical vests poured out efficient and silent weapons, holstered but visible. The gold letters across their chests gleamed in the afternoon. Sun FBI. The entire neighborhood went silent. My friends gaped, mouths wide. Neighbors scrambled to hold their phones higher, recording every second. Karen froze mid-step, her face draining of color until she looked like a ghost in yoga pants. Buzzcut stiffened. Smirk. Smirk evaporated. The lead agent, tall, broad-shouldered, exuding authority, strode forward. His voice boomed, no hesitation, no doubt. Officers, step aside, Buzzcut blinked. Excuse me? You heard me, the agent repeated. Step aside. This isn't your jurisdiction anymore, Smirk sputtered. We were handling a call. The agent cut him off with a raised hand. We're not here for him. He jabbed a finger toward me. We're here for you. Gasps erupted from the watching neighbors. Someone dropped their phone. Karen's. Jaw flapped open and shut like a fish gasping for air. Buzzcut's face went red. This is a mistake. 2 agents flanked him before he could even finish. They moved like clockwork, snapping cuffs on his wrists. So fast the crowd barely registered what had happened. Smirk tried to backpedal, but another agent grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back with mechanical precision. You can't do this, Smirk shouted, his voice cracking. We're the law here. The lead agent's expression didn't change. Not anymore. Karen stumbled forward, her voice shrill and panicked. Wait. What's happening? They're supposed to arrest him. I'm the one who called. I'm the victim. The agent finally looked at her, his eyes cold and sharp. Ma'am, you might want to... Stop talking before you incriminate yourself further. Karen's face contorted in confusion. Further? What are you talking about? I just reported a suspicious person. That's not a crime. The agent ignored her. He nodded toward me instead, his tone shifting. Thank you for your patience, sir. We'll take it from here. Karen spun toward me, disbelief etched on every line of her face. Wait, you knew about this? You set this up. I tilted my head, letting the silence stretch just long enough for everyone watching to lean in. Then I smiled. I told you the clock was ticking. Karen's mouth dropped open. She shook her head. Violently. No, this isn't real. This is some kind of mistake. You can't just storm in here and arrest police officers. But that's exactly what they were doing. Buzzcut and Smirk were already being walked to the SUVs, their protest drowned out by the snapping of cameras, and the buzz of neighbors, whispering furiously. One agent pulled a folder from his vest, flipping it open for Karen to see. Internal investigation, multiple complaints, pattern of racial misconduct, corruption tied to falsified reports. These men have been under surveillance for months. Karen staggered back, her eyes wide, her body trembling. No, I didn't know. Didn't know, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. Karen, you didn't care. As long as they believed your lies, you thought you had power. But power built on lies has a way of crumbling. The neighbors murmured louder, nodding. Phones were raised higher, recording Karen's every flinch, every tremor. The queen bee was unraveling before her hive. She tried one last desperate plea. I was just following the rules. I was protecting the neighborhood. I stepped forward, meeting her eyes with a calm she couldn't fathom. No, Karen, you were protecting your ego, and now look where it got you. The lead agent gave a sharp whistle. More SUVs rolled past, heading straight down the street toward the police station. The message was clear. This wasn't just about two bad cops. It was bigger. Karen's knees buckled. She grabbed the fence for support, staring in horror as her allies were driven away in federal vehicles. I turned back to my grill, picked up the spatula, and flipped a steak as if nothing had happened. Then I glanced at Karen deadpan. Steak still warm. Want some? Oh, wait, never mind. It's not on your approved HOA menu. Laughter rippled through the neighbors. Phones captured every second. Karen's face burned crimson, her voice cracking as she screamed, "This isn't over!" But it was. She just didn't know it yet. Because once the FBI rolls into your neighborhood over isn't something you get to decide. If you've never seen an empire crumble, let me tell you, it doesn't happen with a bang. It happens with a whimper. And Karen, oh, she was whimpering. The neighborhood that once trembled under her HOA clipboard now stood as her jury. People weren't just watching anymore. They were whispering, pointing, recording, uploading. The same. Neighbors she'd fined for untrimmed hedges and scolded for leaving their bins out too long now had front-row seats to her downfall. Karen clutched her phone like it was a life raft. She frantically dialed a number, pressing it to her ear. "Yes, hello. I need to file a complaint. They're arresting the wrong people." Her words choked off when the line went dead. She tried again, hands shaking, but an FBI agent stepped forward, cool as ice. "Ma'am, I'd advise against making false reports. You've made enough of those for a lifetime." The crowd chuckled. Karen's face flushed, beet red. "You don't understand," she screeched. "I was protecting the community." "I was, but the agent cut her off." "From what? Barbecue dribs? Laughter on a Saturday. Your neighbors aren't buying it anymore." Karen turned desperately to the people watching. "Don't just stand there. You know I've kept this neighborhood safe for years. You know I'm the reason property values went up." A voice from the crowd shot back. "Property values went up in spite of you, Karen," another neighbor chimed in. "Safe. You made us prisoners in our own yards." The murmurs turned into a wave of agreement. Karen's face crumpled as realizations sank in the kingdom she thought she ruled had no subjects left. Meanwhile, the officers she'd counted on for backup were shoved into SUVs' heads, ducked in shame. The neighborhood's children pointed and whispered, "Are they really criminals?" Parents didn't stop them. Nobody rushed to defend the cops. Karen's voice cracked as she shouted, "This isn't fair! She jabbed a trembling finger at me. "He's the problem. He's the one breaking rules. Why aren't you arresting him?" I finally spoke calm and cutting. "Karen, you spent years trying to paint me as the villain, but today everyone saw the truth with their own eyes, and you can't find that away." The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. It was cathartic, a release from years of her tyranny. Karen staggered backward, Harrent's confident stride reduced to shaky steps. She glanced at the FBI agents, hoping for some shred of validation. But they ignored her. She looked at the neighbors, but they turned their backs. Even her fellow HOA board members, who'd once nodded along to her tantrums, avoided her gaze. The queen was dethroned. I walked closer, close enough for only her to hear. "You thought you had power because you had a phone, a clipboard, and a couple of crooked cops. But power built on lies always collapses. And when it does, it collapses hard." Her eyes welled up. For the first time, I saw something that looked like shame. She tried to speak, but her voice came out. I just wanted control. I didn't want to be ignored." I leaned back, letting my words carry so the whole neighborhood could hear. "And in the end, Karen, the only thing you controlled was your own downfall." Phones clicked, Cameras rolled. The internet was about to feast. Karen covered her face with her hands, shoulders trembling. But humiliation is a hungry beast, and the crowd wasn't done. A teenager shouted from across the street, "Hey, Karen, want to find me for this?" He raised a middle finger high. The crowd erupted in laughter. Another neighbor, a woman Karen had once fined for unauthorized flowers, called out, "Guess your garden of lies finally withered, huh?" Even the kids joined in chanting softly. "Bye-bye, Karen. Bye-bye, Karen." Karen turned and ran her once proud stride, now reduced to a stumble. She tripped on the curb, caught herself, and skewered into her house, slamming the door so hard the blinds rattled. Silence followed, broken only by the sizzle of forgotten ribs on the grill. I looked at the crowd, lifted my spatula like a microphone, and said, "Well, who's hungry?" The neighborhood roared with laughter. Someone even shouted, "Best HOA meeting ever." But behind the laughter was something deeper. Relief. Freedom. A sense that the neighborhood had been released from years of oppression under Karen's self-appointed reign. And as the SUVs carrying the disgraced officers disappeared down the street, everyone knew one thing for certain. Karen would never hold power here again. Her empire was ashes, her reputation shredded. And me, I was finally free of her nonsense, but I wasn't done yet. Because while Karen hid inside, stewing in her shame, I still had one last message for her and for everyone else watching. Because the real lesson wasn't about Karen at all. It was about what happens when arrogance, prejudice, and lies finally meet the one thing they can't control, the truth. And that truth, it was about to hit harder than any fine, any rule, or any clipboard ever could. When the FBI SUVs rolled away and the last echoes of laughter faded, a strange peace settled over the street. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy with Karen's constant scrutiny. The neighborhood, my neighborhood, felt lighter. I stood at the grill, flipping the last of the steaks as if nothing had happened. My friends chuckled nervously, still processing the fact that they had just witnessed federal agents cart off 2 cops in cuffs. "Dude," one of them whispered, "what are you?" I smiled faintly. Just a guy who got tired of being pushed around. The truth was more complicated. For months, I'd been quietly assisting in an internal investigation. Not undercover in some Hollywood sense. I wasn't wearing wires or carrying a badge, but I had eyes, ears, and evidence. The FBI needed people like me, everyday citizens who'd seen misconduct firsthand. Karen's little stunt had simply accelerated the inevitable. And in that moment, I realized something. She hadn't just humiliated herself. She had handed Meath a perfect ending to a long, ugly chapter. Neighbors approached cautiously, as if they were testing the boundaries of this new reality. One man clapped, me on the shoulder. "We've all wanted to say something for years, but she made life miserable for anyone who spoke up. You stood your ground." "Respect," a woman added. "She fined me for letting my grandkids play chalk games on the sidewalk, said it was graffiti. I hope she never shows her face at an HOA meeting again." The crowd nodded, voices growing braver with each shared grievance. Years of resentment poured out like a dam had broken. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen, had ruled by fear. But now that fear was gone, I raised my spatula like a toast. Well, here's to a Karen-free neighborhood. Cheers erupted. For the first time, laughter didn't have to be whispered. Later that night, as I cleaned up the grill and the stars blinked awake above the cul-de-sac, I caught sight of Karen's house. The blinds were drawn tight, the lights dimmed. The once bustling command post of the neighborhood's tyrant now looked like a bunker. I imagined her inside, stewing in her humiliation, replaying every second of the afternoon. She wanted control. She craved power. But instead, she'd exposed herself and the crooked cops she depended on to the one force she couldn't bend: the truth. And truth once unleashed doesn't go back in the bottle. For me, the story wasn't about revenge. Sure, watching Karen squirm was satisfying. Watching the FBI dismantle her little power trip was poetic, but the real victory was what came after neighbors. Talking freely, people smiling again, kids chalking up sidewalks without fear of fines. That's the thing about bullies. They only win when you play their game. The moment you step outside their rules, when you stand tall, when you speak up, you remind them that their power is an illusion. And Karen. She was nothing more than an illusionist with a clipboard. The next HOA meeting was a sight to behold. Karen tried to show up, tried to reclaim her throne, but the room fell silent when she walked in. Eyes burned holes through her. Whispers turned into laughter. She mumbled an excuse and fled before the meeting even began. That was the last time she ever dared to preside. Now, here's where I turn from storyteller to neighbor. Because this story, as wild as it sounds, isn't just about Karen or me or a couple of crooked cops. It's about you. How many times have you been told to keep quiet, to play along, not rock the boat, because that's just how things are? How many times have you watched people like Karen strut around unchecked because everyone was too afraid to speak up? Here's the lesson. Silence feeds bullies. Patience exposes them. And truth, though, sometimes slow always arrives. Karen thought she could weaponize prejudice. The cops thought they could abuse authority. But in the end, all they did was right their own downfall. And me, I didn't have to scream or threaten or fight. I just had to stand firm, stay patient, and let justice catch up. So to everyone watching this, don't let people like Karen define your story. Don't let fear keep you silent. Whether it's a neighbor, a boss, or anyone who thrives on intimidation, remember that their power lasts only as long as you let them believe it. Truth has a way of finding its stage, and when it does, the audience will see them for who they are. Now, I've told you my story. I want to hear yours. Have you ever dealt with a Karen in your neighborhood, at work, or anywhere else? Drop your story in the comments. I'll be reading them. And trust me, nothing bonds us faster than surviving a Karen. And if you enjoyed this story, if it made you laugh, gasp, or even cheer a little, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. More HOA drama, more neighborhood battles, and more well-deserved downfalls are coming your way. Because one thing I've learned, Karens never stop, but neither do we. At the end of the day, this story isn't just about Karen or crooked cops or even the FBI. It's about what happens when people forget the simple truth. Respect is earned, not demanded. Karen believed power came from fear, from clipboards, fines, and intimidation. The officers believed their badges gave them the right to treat others unfairly. But fear is fragile, and false authority always crumbles. What lasts? Integrity, patience, courage. Sometimes standing your ground doesn't mean yelling the loudest. It means holding steady when lies surround you. It means trusting that the truth, even if it takes time, will reveal itself. And that's something every one of us can carry into our own lives. Whether it's a toxic neighbor, a difficult boss, or someone who underestimates you, remember their power only lasts as long as your silence. So don't stay silent. Speak your truth. Stand tall. And trust that when the storm clears, people will see who was right all along. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to deal with a Karen or someone who abused their authority? Share your story in the comments. I promise you're not alone. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next HO showdown. Because at the end of the day, these stories aren't just mine.